Hello and welcome back to DataCube's free online Power BI training course. Today is episode 9 and it's all about advanced design. In episode 7 we spoke about design basics. So today we're going to add on that and speak about advanced design in 5 key topics. We want to speak about minimalism, alignment, the 12 column rule, background images and icons. I'm going to jump straight into this episode with an example. This is something I haven't created myself. This is something created by a design agency based in Paris called Agency. They have absolutely no association with us whatsoever, but I use their visuals, their designs as great inspiration. They mainly do web design, but they do some dashboards, and this is a really great example of some of these advanced design themes that I want to talk about today, and I can talk about 4 of them straight away. One of them, minimalism. Something we learned in episode 7 on the design basics was about using white space. You can see they use loads of white space. There's loads of gaps between each of their sort of reporting areas. Lots of white space. Nothing's too big, nothing's cluttered. It's minimal. Which kind of leads on to the second point that I want to speak about, which is kind of alignment. You can see everything is pretty much left aligned. So in this table here, everything looks to be kind of left aligned in these columns. It's the same with all these words, the subtitles, the titles. This one actually is centered, which is kind of interesting. But you can see over here, these are all left aligned. So it's consistent alignment, which is really interesting. You see a lot of people trying to center everything, so this title will be centered above here, and it loses that sort of structure, and that ties in really well with that first point of minimalism. The third point about the 12 column rule I'll get to in a bit later, because it's harder to just describe looking at something like this. The third thing is background images. Now, they haven't really used background image because I don't think they've made this in Power BI. If you were to make something like this in Power BI, you can create a background image. So this this pink ribbon down the left, used as a sort of toolbar, navigation pane, that we can make in a background image. And the last thing is icons. Now they're using icon, brand, icons, logo. They're using icons to signify different areas, which you can click on. They don't need words. They're using icons here to represent certain areas of the report, and over here in the bureau. So they're actually using a lot of these sort of advanced design features here straight away, and in all, this makes really nice looking dashboard. The first 2 topics then from today, minimalism and alignment. It's not something I really need to go into detail, it's just something that needs to be set as part of your design principles. So keep things minimal, keep things clutter free. Sort of an advancement of using that white space. Alignments, choose one, stick with one. I like to keep things left aligned. Again, choose one of those and stick with it, be consistent. Left alignment works really well as sort of titles, subtitles, and then charts underneath. So adopt the principle and stick with it for consistency. So the next thing we need to speak about is background images. Now, what I do is when I get a new client or for internal projects is I create a small catalogue of background images to use within my Power BI workbook. Now this is an example of a few I've made for DataCube. So this one is just the sort of on brand, dark blue box with our logo, and then white for all my visuals. I guess that kind of looks a bit like the agency me, apart from this blue box on the left is quite a lot bigger because this is a place where I put filters, I put page navigation in. So these are just sort of variations of these. This is one where it has 2 containers in, with a small drop shadow, so I can put charts or KPIs or whatever I might need to put inside those boxes. And I've made various versions of these with different sized containers, different numbers of containers, and you can see they're all kind of like a grid, so they all line up. The space between all the boxes is always the same. So this is one for sort of 6 visuals. This is one I made for sort of social media posts with the ribbon along the top instead of down the side, so I can put a title up on the top. I won't be needing to put any filters or anything like that. So that's sort of different branding colour on that one. This one is just one big box, and allows me to, and I can always make them quite quickly. Now I've got a sort of framework. I actually made these in Photoshop, although there's probably simpler ways of doing it. I know there's some free tools out there like Canva, or Adobe have another one called XD, which is a free version, and it can make simple things like background images and container boxes with drop shadows simply and freely. So it might be something worth checking out. So what you could do is, in Power BI, is insert things like text boxes or images and change the background colour. So on this one I could have made it that dark blue. There's kind of like that background already, and then in my selection pane I can this text box put at the bottom, so it's underneath everything, and that looks quite good straight away, and I can always import my logo. Problem is, if I miss one of these when I'm clicking on it, now I've just got that box and I can't click on any of my filters. So it's really good to have it as an image that sits behind, so that you don't have that problem. And it's a problem that clients reported on before, where I tried to click these filters and all I just get is the blue box, because they missed it slightly, which is fair enough. And then you have to click somewhere else, but then you might accidentally click on a chart and then it filters something. So it's really good to have a background image instead of using sort of containers or text boxes and adding images and logos over the top. So you would have noticed I've made a kind of dashboard here. I've titled it the overview dashboard, and it's just kind of a copy and paste job out of all the work we've made in our previous episodes. And what I've done is, I know that I have that folder of nice background images, so what I can do is I can get those back up, and I can import them into Power BI. If I just find it now, and I can use it as a background image. So I think it was this D3.5. I've actually already put it in and resized my charts accordingly. But if I copy that location, what you can do, if you click off any chart and off any visual, so it's popped up there. So just a blank space, I can click on the roller, the format roller, press page background, and you can see here you can add an image as your background. So if I add image, paste that location I had before, and I know it's D3.5. Automatically, I don't know why Power BI does this. You think, oh, well, it's there, but why isn't it showing? Transparency automatically goes to 100%, so make sure you pull that all the way down to 0. And you can see now how the difference between not having a background, where those charts look kind of a bit plonked on. Yeah, you can tell they're quite well spaced, there's a good amount of white space in between. Having those containers with the drop shadows really sets them off, and makes it a lot slicker and professional. Now I've got the blue box in behind here, but I know now if I can't click on anything, so I'm never going to lose my filters, never going to lose my title. So you can see how a background image there has made a pretty average looking dashboard turn into quite a slick looking dashboard. Like, obviously there's quite a lot here that could be reformatted and smartened up, and it probably wouldn't take too long to do that, but straight away you can see that it's actually a decent difference here, just by adding that background image. So really cool if you can make a little collection of background images, and then you can resize those and make different versions of them, and really can make a good difference to what your dashboard can look like. Next up on my list is icons. So what you can see here in the example are these charts, these little chart icons. I've used those with bookmark selections and actions sort of process, which I'm explaining in a later episode. I think I've got 1 or 2 episodes dedicated just to speak about this. But you can basically use them to change or navigate. So I'm actually using these charts to change what the chart actually shows. Now you can see I haven't formatted these properly because I quickly threw this together. But I've got 3 different filters here: task, study, element, and I use the chart icon as a sort of button. So instead of have these charts split by task, I can split them by study, as you can see on the axis there, or by element. You could also use icons really well to show headline numbers. So instead of writing number of customers 1 million, you could have an icon which is a person or a sort of outline of a person as an icon, as a symbol, which represents what you're trying to show. So yeah, or for example, instead of saying income last year or total income, you could have an icon of a bank or of the currency that you're working in, whether that be pounds, euros, dollars, yen, whatever it might be. But you can really use icons well, both as navigation and as ways of not having to use words in your workbooks to represent what you're trying to show. So the last thing I need to talk about today is the 12 column rule. Now I'm going to represent this just in a Google image search. So I'd like you to picture your workbook split by 12 columns. Now 12 is necessary because of the way you can divide and break 12 down, which is shown rather well here. So you can break your 12 columns by 12 by just having one item spanning all 12. You can break that down by having them split differently, whether that be 4 3s or 3 4s, or 1 again here, or 2 6s, or whatever it might be. But it's really important to show how you can split your the size of your containers, the size of your charts, down and divide it by the total space you have. But it's important to make sure that things line up. So make sure the left hand side of all your charts, just say if they came to the left here, all line up together. If they're all the same size, just say they were 300 pixels wide, make sure the left hand side and the right hand side of them do line up. So if you had multiple of these stacked on top of each other, they should be in alignment. It shows how you can split. So if you need to have bigger charts, you need to have smaller charts, you can really be using your the space effectively. So we know, or we may not know, I'll show you now. If you go to the roller, we can look at page size here. Now it will be blanked out, but your page width as standard on a 16:9 ratio is 12,800 pixels by 720, so it's kind of like a half or an HD ready pixel count. So you can be splitting your report or your dashboard into 12 grids, so it's that 1280 divided by 12, and it allows you to line things up. So we know that I haven't done this on this example, but we know that you can go into general and you can position on coordinates, so it's really easy to actually have things laid out exactly on top of each other. So this waterfall chart at the top here is sitting on an x-axis of 324, and so is the one below. And I know that the width of that is 288, so the width of this one should be 288 as well. Now it's not. As you can see, it's sort of going over to the left there, but to make a really professional looking consistent dashboard, it's a really good idea to use this 12 column rule. Now that's comes from sort of web design, user interface. So if I were to click on website up here, we can see some examples where this was used, and I saw a good example of this earlier. you can see how everything sort of fits and is divided well across the 12 column rule. Now this is a good example here where you can see, this is the one I was trying to look for, where you can see multiple sort of containers split out, and it looks really good and consistent even though they're different sizes, and that's because they've adopted this principle. They've also used the same consistent white space. Now the good thing about 12 column rule is that it's not perfectly even. Well, it's even, but I mean there's actually gaps in between each so that you have that white space, and it sort of has a built-in white space function, if you like, and a built-in minimalist fill. So it's a really cool way of trying to make your reports look super professional. Now it is quite time consuming, so that's why I've left it to the last of the advanced design, as it's the one you can kind of take on without having to do the calculations, but just bear it in mind to keep that space in between, to keep things aligned consistently, and think about sort of ratios that you have on your report. So that's a wrap on design. In next week's episode, we're going to be speaking about bookmark selections and actions, way of using buttons to navigate. We can set them on icons like we spoke about earlier, and I showed you an example there of changing your chart, which was all linked up together with bookmark selection and actions. So look forward to seeing you for that. I hope these design themed lessons were really useful for you. So catch you next week. Thank you very much for listening.